This presentation is a piece of my thesis that I submitted to the Social Sciences Symposium, and it won first place, I'm happy to say. So I thought I would share it with you. So, in his book, Slaves of the State, Black Incarceration from the Chain Gang to the Penitentiary, Dennis Childs asks this series of eye-opening questions. What if, in modern-day Germany or Poland, a Jewish person convicted of a crime was sent to a fully operational Auschwitz or Buchenwald to pay his debt to society? What would be the world's response to this scenario? Would the branding of a Jewish subject as criminal rationalize his disappearance into a renovated concentration camp for the remainder of his natural life? What is it about the social and ontological position of the black subject in the United States that makes his disappearance into a modernized slave plantation both socially tolerated and experientially normal? And the reason he's asking this question is because there are several prison farms operating throughout the South up to the present day. There's Angola Farm in Louisiana, Sugarland in Texas, and Parchman Farm in Mississippi. Because the amendment abolishing slavery in the United States has a rather wide loophole in it. It says, neither slavery nor involuntary servitude, except as punishment for a crime, whereof the person shall be duly convicted, shall exist within the United States or any of its territories. My research shows that except as punishment for a crime is a loophole that was written intentionally so that Southern lawmakers could immediately set about creating black codes, and they were pretty loose laws that were aimed specifically at being able to imprison black people who had been newly freed. For a time, there were auctions of these black code offenders on the courthouse steps until abolitionists protested, but even after that, they were leased to corporations en masse and often sent to these prison farms which had been functioning as plantations and looked exactly like a plantation. There's no walls, no bars, no buildings other than the barracks that they lived in. Even more disturbing, Parchman Farm and Angola Prison are still in operation. And when you make the photo, there we go. When you make the photo black and white, as has been done here, it's hard to tell which photo is which. Well, what if this was Germany? What if these were Jews? Why are we okay with this state of things when it's African Americans, poor people, and immigrants? The United States currently detains roughly 1.9 million people, down from over 2 million pre-COVID. It has 4.22% of the world's population, but over 25% of its incarcerated people. Here's a few facts about incarceration in America today. Of the 665, 1/3 of the total number of people who are in local jails, 457,000 have not been convicted of a crime. They're awaiting trial in jail because they can't afford bail. Median bail for a felony is $10,000, an estimated 8 months' income for the average person arrested. Just a reminder, too, that in our justice system, a person is innocent until proven guilty. So theoretically, we are incarcerating 500,000 innocent people. 1 in 4 people in state prison are there for supervision violations, which are things like failure to appear in court, probation violations, and things like that. So the reality is we criminalize poverty. Misdemeanors account for 25% of the jail population, and much more in some places. That includes criminalization of homelessness, which is on the rise. They receive no state-appointed counsel and are pressured to accept a plea deal, and even if innocent, to avoid jail time, and then they have a record with attendant higher likelihood of rearrest. 1 in 5 black men born in 2001 is likely to be imprisoned at some time in their lifetime. There are more African American adults under correctional control today than were enslaved in 1850. And there are more people of color disenfranchised because of a felony on their record than were enfranchised when the 15th Amendment was ratified. My project, which is part of my honors thesis that I defended a couple of weeks ago, examines the direct line from slavery to convict leasing to mass incarceration, and in particular the ways that religion interacted with it each step of the way. I examined and presented last year at the Social Science Symposium the slavery question, and this year focused more on mass incarceration. And I wanted to look at the theology on both sides of that issue. The prison industrial complex is an evolution of prior systems, including slavery and mass convict leasing, designed to maintain racial hegemony and corporate power. Michelle Alexander's now iconic 2010 book, The New Jim Crow, states that former prisoners enter a hidden underworld of legalized discrimination and permanent exclusion. They are members of America's new undercaste. They may lose voting rights, they can be discriminated against for employment or housing, and it's all legal. They have to check a box that says they're a felon. And they cannot receive government assistance in the form of Section 8 housing, SNAP assistance, welfare, and many other programs, which often means their families cannot either. And what about the industrial part of the prison industrial complex? One aspect that you do not often hear protested about our current system is for-profit prisons. They are problematic in their inordinate influence in Washington, the fact that they pay very little in taxes, and the need to increase revenue at the cost of incarcerating more people. But this is only a piece of a much larger capitalist pie. State-run prisons and local jails also have privatized many services, including communications, medical care, commissary, personal care products, access to books, and more. By privatizing these services, prisons and jails offload the cost of incarceration directly onto those incarcerated and their families, who are frequently already struggling. I work with an organization called Cookeville Mutual Aid Collective that writes to incarcerated people in Putnam County Jail. They are provided very little, and any work they do is compensated in time served rather than any kind of wage. And if they don't have anybody to support them monetarily on the outside, they go without shampoo, hygiene products, pillows, clothing, bras, all sorts of things. And these are not only people who are awaiting trial, but the jail in Putnam County and in many places in Tennessee is operating as overflow for the state system. So there are many people there who are serving long-term sentences as well. And things that would be provided in a state facility are denied to them. This creates a company store effect. Prison Policy Initiative noted in 2017 that 65% of incarcerated people were working for a wage, an average of 14 to 63 cents an hour nationwide. That's the average. But in many cases, that money goes right back to the facility to pay for, again, those commissary fees, to buy things they need, to pay so that they can communicate with their families or even read a book. And if they have to have any kind of health care, they're responsible for that as well. So, again, it sets up a cycle of long-term debt and incarceration, especially when the probation and parole systems are also often run by for-profit companies. So why do we imprison people? Well, because it's profitable, obviously. But I wanted to look at the theological and sociological functions of incarceration. We might think of 4 reasons to incarcerate people that I've put here. to deter crime, to rehabilitate people who have committed crimes, to separate them from society for the safety of society, and simple retribution. Let's look at deterrence first. That might be primary, encouraging the incarcerated individual to not reoffend, or it might be secondary, deterring people who have not committed a crime from committing a crime because they don't want to go to jail. Recidivism in the United States is among the highest in the world, so our system is not working for primary deterrence. There are mixed reports on secondary deterrence, but Judge Jim Gray notes in his book, Why Our Drug Laws Have Failed and What We Can Do About It, that in some communities, jail has lost its deterrent impact because we're incarcerating so many young people that it becomes a rite of passage in those communities. Well, what about rehabilitation? Our system as it is now has little emphasis on rehabilitation. Rehabilitation is expensive, and the system used to establish the longest sentence a person could serve for a particular crime, whereas now we establish mandatory minimum sentences so a person's behavior in prison doesn't have any impact on when they get out. Safety requires a little more discussion. Studies have shown that the traumatic experience of being in prison, the stigma that follows them afterward, and inability to find employment and housing creates a scenario where people are actually more likely to commit crime. Therefore, the only way this works to prevent their contact with others in society is to keep them incarcerated indefinitely. And obviously that's not sustainable and it's not humane. Additionally, ideas of what is violent and nonviolent crime might differ from the way the state apportions those. This means we have to take a serious look at the retributive nature of our justice system. A study done by the Alliance for Safety and Justice found that victims of violent crime supported shorter sentences and rehabilitation, and above all, they favored treating the incarcerated people in a way that would prevent further crime, above all, rather than long retributive sentences. The American system is not designed to assist victims in any way except for the supposed satisfaction of seeing the person who harmed them be harmed. Look at it linguistically. People who transgress the law are called upon not to pay the debt to their victim, but to pay their debt to society. We see them as transgressing not the rights of another citizen, but some kind of sacred social order. It's a theological question. What would happen, asks Unitarian Universalist minister and activist Jason Leiden, if we let go of our cultural and theological reliance on punishment? I lost my slide. One second. What would happen if we held systems accountable for harm done? Not just the people who offend themselves, but also the system itself. What if we used restorative justice and transformative justice, which have been shown to ameliorate crime, rather than the system we have? What if we considered people who transgress the laws as human beings rather than a source of income? And I think it's well past time that we imagine a better way. So, I've been working on this thesis for 3 years, almost, and I hope to turn it into a book, actually, so we'll see how that goes. That's what I'll be working on this summer before I start grad school in the fall. Any questions?